It's Saturday on Melrose Mountain, and it's foggy outside. It's cool and overcast, and the fog has not lifted, and it's already midday. So we're just taking one day at a time here in the fog. The lake, every now and then you can't see across it. Sometimes you can, but I may just take the camera out to the very end here and see if you can see what we're looking at across the lake with the fog. We're in Mark chapter 2. Try to list your friends, starting to your closest friends to your most distant friends. And then put alongside of each of those friends a C for Christian. Most of you that watch this video are already Christians, and most of your friends are Christians. And that's not all bad. Obviously, Christians have a good influence on us. They encourage us in godly things. And certainly we don't want to spend a lot of time with those that would influence us towards evil or unrighteousness. At the same time, how will we ever get people saved if we're not in circles of people that are not yet believers? It's a delicate balance, isn't it? First of all, we have a lot more in common with those that have Christian values. Therefore, we want to spend more time with those that are Christians. At the same time, Jesus, in this particular section of Scripture, chapter 2, verses 13 through 17, calls Levi a tax gatherer, one that typically would be involved in a corrupt gathering of taxes, one that would not be a great candidate for Christianity. And yet Levi, or Matthew, followed Jesus and was one of his very faithful disciples. What do? How do we associate with others? Well, it's very, very important to understand our own weaknesses. And if we find that those that we gather around have an ungodly or an unrighteous relationship, and ones that tend to drag us down and become less godly, it would be a good idea to keep those friends at a long distance. At the same time, we need to be able to influence those that perhaps are seeking, those that are looking for something more in life than what they've found in secular humanism. So as Jesus was criticized for dining with tax gatherers and sinners of all kinds, it's important for us to realize we got to be in the world, but not of the world. We need to be careful that we evaluate friendships and relationships so that they don't lead into ungodliness. And we need to be sure that we're having a greater influence for good than the people that we hang around with having an influence for bad. It's a delicate balance. Remember that Jesus was God in the flesh. He didn't have any problem keeping that balance. But we as humans have to be very careful about that. And as I've shared with other pastors and with other men that perhaps have a female friend, if you feel any magic between you and the female, it's a good idea to get yourself some space and to go the opposite direction. It's a very easy thing to have a transfer of affection. The grass always looks greener on the other side of the street. And so we need to be very careful about female friendships, and ladies, you same way, you need to be careful about male friendships. It's easy to sit there and justify and say to yourself, but they're only friends and there's nothing wrong here. But it's very easy for signals to be mixed and for men perhaps to think that there's more there than there is. And so you have to be very, very careful with all of your friendships, both male and female. Jesus came and he said, I've come to not for the righteous, but to call sinners. And as Paul would say, and I was foremost of all of the sinners. I'm glad he came to save me. I'm glad that he came because I was a sinner. And I certainly want him to use me in the lives of sinners so that they might come to know Christ and find the righteousness of Christ dwelling in them. But I also want God to give me a spirit of discernment so that I know which friendships will be godly friendships and will lead to righteousness and lead to salvation of the lost, and which ones might drag me down so that I might lose my testimony. There was an evangelist in New Orleans, and his ministry was on Bourbon Street. He fell to temptation. For a long time, he successfully ministered to those that were involved in the sin of Bourbon Street, and many got saved. But he was with them so often and so many times, and so much of his life was surrounded by them, that he actually fell to the temptation himself, and therefore lost a great deal of his ministry and his witness to even others. So let's be careful that we find that balance. And as Jesus found the balance, but he was God in the flesh and had a lot more resistance than we did, we need to show that we have a discernment to know what relationships are good. He came to call sinners, and so should we, but we've got to be careful that we don't become one as we are too close to those associations. That's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a wonderful Saturday.